Howdy gamers, and I was just fired from my job for talking about Super Mario 3D World too much. Happens to the best of us. Anyways, the job market is pretty competitive nowadays, so I need something that will set me apart on my resume. Luckily, I've got just the thing. It was either riddles or a second language, so I picked the one that had a DS game.
The DS sold over 154 million units, so when I say everyone had one, it's barely an exaggeration. I've heard stories of people's grandmas just randomly having it, and I'm convinced if you look between your couch cushions you'll find one. And because I was born in 2004, that means I grew up with my own. Well, only sort of. My brother and I shared the cobalt blue model of the DS Lite for most of its lifespan. However, upon hearing and believing that if you got a DSi XL and picked up the Mega Mushroom in New Super Mario Bros., the DS would actually grow, I knew I had to get my hands on one. Unfortunately, the laws of physics didn't allow for such a thing to be real, but at the very least, it gave me access to a system I wouldn't have to share with my brother. This is probably where you expect me to say that one of the first games I owned was Professor Layton and the Curious Village, but no. I mean, maybe I had it. I was one of those gremlins who threw away their DS cases and stored all their games loose, which I regret. Because of that, I've lost most of my library for the system, so I've never really explored much of what it has to offer. It didn't help that for the longest time, I saw handheld gaming as inferior to console gaming, only a distraction for road trips or grandpa's funeral. All of that, mixed with me being a dumb stupid kid at the time and not knowing what games are good or bad, I've missed out on a lot of titles the system is known for. For Christ's sake, I've played Eminem's Adventure, but not Personal Trainer Cooking on the DS, so I figured I should actually explore the library of the system properly. To start, in December I played through Hotel Dusk, which ended up being a masterpiece, so next I chose Professor Layton because after my friend recommended I play Final Fantasy X, and it ended up being one of my favorite games of all time, I'm at the point where if he told me jumping off a bridge would be a fun way to spend an afternoon, I'd believe him. Technically, he didn't recommend Professor Layton and the Curious Village directly. However, he talked about how much he loved the third game and said it was worth playing the entire series just for that one entry. Now, I haven't played the third game yet, nor do I even own it, but I do have the first game, and if it's any indication of the quality that's to come, I'm in for a treat. That's not to say Professor Layton and the Curious Village is some masterpiece. It's no Nintendo DS Digit Blood Glucose monitoring system, and as such, I definitely have my fair share of problems with it. For starters, it suffers from I'm an early DS game syndrome, where it loves to shove touch controls down your throat even when they aren't needed. Maybe it's because I played this on a DSi XL, but I always found it awkward to move from holding it with two hands to holding it with one when the stylus was needed and then back again. There are so many things that could have been done with button controls that the game doesn't allow for. I'm fine with the use of the stylus for stuff like the puzzles, otherwise those would have been pretty clunky at times, but stuff like moving around the town did not need to be controlled by touch. Being able to press the D-pad and then move in that direction instead of tapping would have been nice, and since the face buttons have no use when on the overworld, what if they were mapped to different on-screen icons like shoe or trunk? You can press A to go through dialogue, meaning it's not like level 5 games absolutely hates the alphabet, so it makes no sense to limit the rest of the controls. Even some of the touch functions that are in the game aren't done the best. I'm specifically referring to how you have to type in your answer to puzzles. The idea is at least pretty cool. You type in the letter L, it recognizes that and puts that in for you. It's so much more immersive and stylistic than a keyboard could ever be. The only problem is it doesn't work sometimes. It's hard to be immersed as a world-renowned genius professor if you don't know what the fricka number 5 is. That's not even a joke either. Typing in the number 5 is harder than some Dark Souls boss fights because I could literally never get it to register unless I drew an S, no matter how perfect my penmanship was. I mean, look at me! I'm using the DS stylus of the 1%, but it doesn't work. Some other letters were also finicky, making it a less enjoyable experience, but still not the end of the world. And despite the issues, I still prefer it to a keyboard. Whenever a developer is able to use the system's gimmick in a cool way that doesn't feel forced, I always appreciate it, and it makes the game feel more unique. Another cool use of the touch controls comes from when you're reading the puzzle. The game will allow you to take notes, which as someone who's an idiot, I found really helpful. Being able to write key pieces of information or draw diagrams was great, although I'm sure as you guessed by now, it's not perfect. Some puzzles either don't let you take notes or will automatically erase what you've written down if you take the stylus off the screen. Whenever the game does let you draw multiple times, there's no erase button either, so if you make a mistake you have to clear everything off, making it unnecessarily hard for me to write down my social security number. Honestly, the more I talked, the more I realized that this system probably wasn't for notes and was just for solving puzzles that require the touchscreen, but I still feel like it's worth saying because it was an accidental feature that I found helpful. That being said, it would have been nice if there was a purposeful feature in which you could write down notes on the bottom screen and maybe make it so it's an overlay that can be turned on and off by pressing this theoretical notes button. As for the actual content of the puzzles themselves though, they're amazing. A person might want you to test theirs to see if it's good, a townsfolk could want to measure your intelligence, or maybe someone literally just died reminding another character of a good puzzle. Regardless of the circumstance, they'll be given to you throughout the game, and first it'll tell you the number of the puzzle along with how many Picarats you get for solving it. The harder the puzzle, the more you'll get, which is a novel idea. It lets the player know right off the bat if a puzzle is easy, so they can feel like an idiot for not realizing the answer, and if you get a puzzle wrong, the amount you earn will decrease. This system could have acted to reward the player for solving harder puzzles and prevent them from blindly guessing, but it really doesn't. You would think Picarats act as a currency, but instead they're used to unlock the top secret in the game. So, cool. Their 100% completion bonus, but if that's the case, why have them? In order to 100% the game, you need to complete all the puzzles anyways, and you don't need max Picarats in order to get the top secret, so it doesn't encourage anyone to do anything other than me to rant about them. My best guess is that they act as a high score system, but as a Professor Layton fan, I can confirm we have no friends to compare scores with, so they end up being useless. I would have vastly preferred some NPC who traded Picarats for hint coins. I literally thought that's what they were for until around halfway through the game, but unfortunately not. Hint coins aren't another one of my genius ideas. They do actually exist in the game and are pretty neat. Each puzzle has up to 3 hints available that each cost 1 coin. They're genuinely helpful too. Sometimes I only needed 1 hint, while for others I needed all 3, and never did I feel cheap for using them. In fact, quite the opposite. Because there are a limited amount of hit coins, the amount I had at one time was always small, and I actually found them myself, they felt like an integral part of the game instead of feeling as if I was cheating or using a crutch. In fact, because of hint coins, I never had the urge to look up the answer to a puzzle online, which isn't something I can say for most other puzzle games. Although, to be fair, I'm not sure how hint coins could work in most other games, because the puzzles here were nothing like anything I've played. Most games in this genre have you interacting with the environment, like the portals in Portal, or the rotating screen in Fez, but here, they're literally puzzles. Not so much mechanics you use to interact with the world, but solving a riddle, finding out how many of a specific shape is in a picture, or moving around blocks to get a ball out of a certain spot. Because of that, this game really won't be for everyone. It's not entirely made up of them, but if you don't like riddles, this game won't sell you on them. However, if I asked you to find which person in a group of 3 is lying and you got excited a little bit, it's probably for you. Don't take that the wrong way either. That's not to say there's nothing else to the game. There's so much charm from the characters, world, and story. Even the puzzles themselves aren't lazily slapped together. There are the hints I talked about, but also a nice drawing to accompany it, in text that will not necessarily add some flavor. Not to mention, when you submit your answer to the puzzle, there's this great short clip of Layton or Luke saying they've got the answer, accompanied by 3 suspenseful clock ticks, making it feel amazing when you do get the answer right, and when you get it wrong like you just disappointed your parents for the 3rd time this week. All of that is to say, I'm not some massive puzzle fan. I can guarantee you if this game was just a list of them from 1 to 120, with everything just written down as if it was on some website your grandparents sent you, I would not have beaten it, but the way the game presented itself was so charming, it was hard not to love. Anyways, I usually talk about the main gameplay a bit more when reviewing something, but I think you already know whether or not you enjoy it. If you're wanting me to criticize something the Sumerians invented, ask me about the Code of Urnamu, because I could talk about that all day, but as far as puzzles go, I think they're pretty neat. Technically, I still do have some problems with them in this game though. Not about the ones they picked. I thought the puzzles were varied enough and had a good range of difficulty, but things such as the context that they were used in. I know that it makes sense within the context of the story, which I absolutely loved, and Also how they're never just given to you, usually there's a short reason to why you're getting them. It's all very superfluous, but added a lot of charm. However, despite those efforts and how much I really do appreciate them, they still don't feel natural within the game. That's one of the benefits of having environmental puzzles. There's a really good flow between solving stuff and just moving around the world. The pacing rarely, if ever, gets broken up, but when you're walking around town, stop to talk to someone, and suddenly you're sent into another dimension to solve puzzles, it sort of ruins the rhythm in a sense. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration. It just opens up a new screen that you can exit out of if you simply don't want to do the puzzle, but that doesn't make it feel any more natural. Obviously, level 5 did this because it would be hard to translate a lot of riddles into physical, tangible things you can interact with, not to mention how much room it would take up, so I can at least appreciate what the game was going for, but the problems that come with it still stand. My next issue with the puzzles, once again, barely has to do with the puzzles themselves, but more so just accessing them. Whenever you find one, it gets added to the puzzle index, which I like. That means you can access ones you've completed at any time, so if a party seems to be dying down, you can quickly save things. The issue with what I said may have just passed you by, but the key word there was ones you've completed, meaning if you can't solve a puzzle, you have to go all the way back to where you found it if you want to attempt it again. That's tedious for multiple reasons because it's easy to forget where a puzzle was from, and even just the act of traveling there is more unnecessary than it needs to be. It feels like the puzzles you couldn't solve would be the ones you want to access at any time in the first place. Additionally, just finding some of the puzzles can be difficult, so it would be nice if there's a reward for beating the game where it would tell you if the screen you're on has a puzzle. Some of them are so weirdly hidden that I feel like expecting players who are trying to 100% the game to tap every part of the screen to find puzzles is borderline unreasonable. I guess I should actually explain how you find everything though, because maybe that'll clear things up. Whenever you're not doing puzzles or talking to someone, you'll be walking around the town and essentially playing a point and click. You might expect me to hate this part, but not really. Initially, I was worried moving around screens decently far apart from each other by just teleporting might get disorienting and I'd be confused with the layout of the town, but the bottom screen, when on the overworld, is always displaying a map, so this never happened. Truthfully, I would have preferred moving around the Curious Village freely. It could have been really cool to do so, making the town feel more real, but I can't in good faith actually call what they did here bad. Each screen is well drawn, there's a sense of scale to the town, and the characters scattered about are animated. With only a short loop, but it was still more charming than having them stand there lifeless. Obviously though, since it's a point and click, you can interact with stuff, which is how you find the puzzles and hint coins. The puzzles you find through people are simple enough, they're easy to see and don't blend into the background. Sometimes the townsfolk won't even have puzzles, and they'll just say something related to the story that made me always want to talk to someone when I went by. They all have a personality that, well, sure was simple and revolved around one trait, like being angry, being a bully, or being the average Professor Layton in the Curious Village hater who isn't loved by the ladies. Sometimes a person will only give a certain type of puzzle too, which is cute. My issue comes from the more hidden aspect to it all. Usually when playing a point and click game, you're doing so with a cursor, meaning it indicates what can and can't be clicked. However, Nintendo only released a keyboard add-on for the DS and forgot the mouse part, so it can't be played like a traditional point and click. Instead of a cursor indicating that there's something to click, you have to tap at random and guess what's interactable. The only hint the game gives is that you should tap suspicious objects, which, sure, I can understand that for a crate or trash can, but not for a piece of rubble or grime. Instead of encouraging the player to pay attention to their surroundings, it encourages them to randomly tap everything on screen in hopes that they'll activate something. Some puzzles are even found this way, however, I found that most of them were well hidden and would activate from tapping something that's more obvious, like a painting or deck of cards. At the very least, the sound effect that plays when you do find a hint coin was satisfying enough to make it worth it. Actually, this game has surprisingly good sound design. This is a topic I don't usually talk about, but it's all done so well here, I feel like I kind of have to. There's already the aforementioned clock ticks to add suspense when answering a puzzle, but there's more, like the jingle that plays when you get something right, or the sound of the text, which I know sounds dumb, but it all culminates to making the game feel even more charming. I'm actually now realizing that I've been using the word charming a lot to describe this game, but it's true. So many parts just ooze charm, which is what makes this game so memorable. And I think the best example of that's probably the animated cutscenes. You heard me right. This game on a Nintendo DS of all things has animated cutscenes. They're all drawn so well, not some generic anime art style, but instead a lean clear one where the lines are all... In my opinion, this helped to make the game stand out and looks nice, especially since it works well as a nod to the old Tintin comics. Admittedly, it's not as if the game is just filled to the brim with cutscenes, and they're pretty compressed to the point where playing on the DS with the biggest screen maybe wasn't the best idea, but whenever they did show up, it was always a treat. They're so lively and did a great job at driving the story forward. Speaking of the story, it might have been my favorite part of the game. You're called to a village in order to solve the mystery of the golden apple. It's the treasure of the Baron that if found, you get to inherit his will. It's not so straightforward though. The village is pretty curious, if you will, and there are multiple twists and turns throughout the story that, apart from being a good hook, do a great job at setting up an ongoing mystery. And the mystery that this game does present is one of my favorite out of any video game ever. There are multiple of them too, 10 to be exact, that all relate together, but it's not obvious how they do so at first. Additionally, more and more pieces of information are revealed to you at a good pace as the story goes on. So by the end, you have all the clues available to realize what's going on because no piece of information is withheld just to be revealed during the explanation. That means you're not cheated out of the chance to put all the pieces together beforehand. It's not all in your face either. I didn't fully realize what was going on, only some parts, and when everything was finally explained, it was really satisfying.
Professor Layton in the Curious Village is such a memorable game, I can't help but recommend to anyone who's interested. Even if you don't have a DS, they remastered the game for the mobile app store, and it's only $10, which I know might seem like a lot, but all the cutscenes are in HD, they added 2 new ones, and there are some other quality of life improvements that, in my opinion, make it worth the price. And that's why to give this game an award, I'd give it the Best $10 Mobile Game Award. I'm begging you to just buy the mobile game. To give the game a score of 100, I would also give it an 85 out of 100. And if I'm being entirely honest, if I wasn't weirdly obsessed with physical games, I probably would have bought it on there. Anyways, even though I still have one more game I need to get through before I can play the third one, I can't help but wonder what Level 5 Games is up to nowadays. I'm sure they're still releasing fun games that I can... Frick! Well, I guess until next time, remember to stay safe, and that I love you guys.